The courtroom was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that comes right before something explodes. When the doors opened, Logan Harrington walked in like he owned the place. Hands in his pockets, chin lifted, a smirk carved across his face. He wasn't just another reckless driver. He was the nephew of the city's police captain, and he carried that privilege like armor. But everything shattered the moment he leaned toward the microphone and whispered just loud enough for the room to hear, "This court doesn't scare me. My uncle can make all of this disappear." Gasps echoed through the room. The cameraman froze. Even the air felt heavier. And then Judge Frank Caprio slowly lifted his eyes. Not angry, not shocked, just disappointed, in a way that promised something unforgettable was about to happen. This would not be a normal hearing. It would become legend. Before the story begins, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another courtroom story. Long before Logan Harrington walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom with that swagger, that arrogance had been carefully cultivated, layer by layer, year after year, by the world he grew up in. To understand the young man who had just threatened a courtroom on live television, you had to understand the life he had lived. Logan was 22, but he carried himself with the entitlement of someone who believed life owed him everything. He grew up in Cranston, in a large colonial-style home with a manicured yard and a driveway that held more luxury cars than a young man his age had any right to own. His father, a successful contractor, traveled constantly. His mother spent more time on charity boards and lunch meetings than at home, so it was Captain William Harrington, his uncle, who became the closest thing to a parent. The captain was respected, sometimes feared, within the police department. He had spent 3 decades building his reputation, enforcing order, and maintaining an image of unshakable authority. To the outside world, he was a model of discipline, but behind closed doors, when it came to Logan, he made exceptions. He pulled strings. He used his influence like a shield. Every time Logan got into trouble, there was a phone call, a quiet conversation, a hand placed on a shoulder, and just like that, the consequences evaporated. And Logan learned one powerful lesson. The law doesn't apply to you if your family controls it. Months before the incident with the elderly woman, Logan had already racked up several dangerous behaviors. A bar fight that fractured another man's nose dismissed. A midnight drag race that ended with property damage record sealed. A hit and run with a parked car labeled a misunderstanding. Each time, the captain showed up, stern-faced but protective, and each time Logan walked away with nothing more than a scolding. So, on the night everything changed, Logan wasn't worried. He wasn't even thinking. It was supposed to be a quick drive home from a late gathering. He slid into his black Dodge Charger, the car his uncle had helped him buy, and revved the engine so loud the neighbors' windows shook. He blasted music, rolled the windows down, and sped through the quiet Providence streets like they belonged to him. The traffic lights were nothing but decoration at the speed he was going. At the corner of Pine and Harrison, the crosswalk signal had just turned red for cars. An elderly woman, Evelyn Brooks, all gray curls and fragile bones, stepped into the crosswalk with her 8-year-old granddaughter, Lily, holding her hand. Logan wasn't slowing down. He wasn't even looking. It happened in seconds. The squeal of brakes grinding against asphalt. The terrified scream of a child. Evelyn stumbling backward and hitting the pavement, Lily falling forward, scraping her knees. Logan's car skidding so close that the heat from the engine brushed Evelyn's legs. People nearby ran toward them. Someone shouted, "Are you insane?" Another yelled, "Call 911." But Logan didn't get out of the car immediately. He stayed inside, breathing hard, annoyed more than anything. When he finally stepped out, he didn't rush to check on them. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look shaken. Instead, he stared at Officer Daniel Cruz, the first officer on scene, and smirked. "You really want to do this," he said. "Captain Harrington won't be happy wasting his time on something like this." A few bystanders filmed the exchange. Officer Cruz, a rookie with only 8 months on the job, fought to stay calm as he wrote the citation. Logan kept his arms folded, leaning against his car, as if he were waiting for a coffee order. "It was nothing," he muttered loud enough for people to hear. "She fell on her own." Evelyn, still trembling, looked at him with disbelief. Lily clung to her grandmother's arm, crying. When the ticket was finally handed to him, Logan snatched it with a dismissive flick of the wrist. He walked away without another word. But Officer Cruz wasn't the only one who noticed the disturbing lack of remorse. One of the witnesses, a woman named Rebecca, stepped forward and whispered to him, "Please, don't let him get away with this." Cruz nodded, but in truth, he wasn't sure he could stop it. He knew the Harrington name. Everyone in the department did. And with dread twisting in his stomach, he filed the report anyway. Over the next few days, the footage of the incident made its way onto local community forums. Neighbors were outraged, parents worried, elderly residents shared their fears about reckless drivers. The incident gained enough attention that Logan couldn't escape the spotlight. For the first time in his life, a mistake of his didn't simply vanish. When Logan received the notice requiring him to appear in court, he didn't panic. He didn't reflect. He didn't even consider the gravity of nearly killing someone. Instead, he laughed. "It's Caprio," he told his friends. "Old guy, soft. He'll probably just talk at me for 5 minutes and let me go." His friends egged him on, telling him to show them who's in charge, feeding the ego that had been growing unchecked for years. He wore designer clothes to court, styled his hair, and strutted through the courthouse hall as if he were walking into a nightclub. People turned to look not at his appearance, but at the arrogance radiating from him like heat. Logan mistook the stares for admiration. What he didn't realize was that Judge Caprio had already seen the dashcam footage the night before. He had watched the near tragedy in slow motion, replayed Evelyn's fall, listened to Lily's cry of terror, and something inside the judge had tightened, not with anger, but with sadness. A deep, painful sadness for how far the young man had drifted from accountability. When Logan stepped into the courtroom for the first time, he felt invincible. When he loosened his shoulders and casually leaned toward the microphone, he felt untouchable. And when he said, "This court doesn't scare me. My uncle can make all of this disappear," he believed it with every fiber of his being. He expected Judge Caprio to flinch. He expected the courtroom to shrink back. He expected to walk out free. But instead, he watched something he had never seen before. A room full of people, every one of them turned against him in an instant. Gasps filled the air. Officer Cruz stiffened. Evelyn clutched Lily closer. Even the court clerk raised an eyebrow. And Judge Caprio, the man at the center of it all, didn't explode, didn't raise his voice, didn't slam his gavel. He simply looked at Logan, a long, piercing, soul-searching look. The kind of look that stripped someone down to their core. The kind of look that said, "You've crossed a line you can't step back from." Then, with a voice calm enough to make the hair on the back of Logan's neck stand up, the judge said, "Young man, you have just said something that will follow you for the rest of your life. No anger, no yelling, just a quiet promise. A promise that this story, starting from that exact moment, was about to change everything. For Logan, for the captain, for the entire room, and most importantly, for justice." The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the courtroom as Logan Harrington strutted back inside for the next session, as if nothing significant had happened the day before. He carried the same casual arrogance, hands deep in his pockets, chin lifted, steps loose and unconcerned. His sneakers squeaked lightly on the polished floor. He didn't glance at the rows of people already seated, nor did he acknowledge the hush that followed him like a ripple of unease. To him, these were spectators in a show where he believed he was the main character. But today, the air felt different. A pressure, a weighting, a sense that something larger than this young man's ego was taking shape. Logan took his place at the defendant's podium and leaned back slightly, as though lounging in a cafe rather than standing in a court of law. He tapped his fingers. Bored, impatient. The court clerk looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and pity, like she was watching someone walk straight toward a cliff without realizing it. Judge Frank Caprio entered a moment later. The room rose, then sat. The judge's steps were slow, measured, thoughtful. His expression was unreadable, neither warm nor cold, neither angry nor resigned, but Logan didn't notice the subtle shift. He didn't see the restrained tension in the judge's jaw, the firm set of his shoulders. "Mr. Harrington," Judge Caprio began, arranging the papers on his desk, "we continue today regarding your charge of reckless driving, your failure to stop at a red light, and your near collision with a pedestrian." Logan responded with an indolent shrug. "Yeah, I remember." He didn't call the judge, "Your Honor." He didn't show a flicker of respect. Judge Caprio's eyes held steady on him. Do you recall what happened yesterday in this courtroom? Logan smirked. You mean when I said the truth? That this whole thing is being blown out of proportion? A rustle of disapproval traveled through the gallery. Someone whispered sharply, Is he serious? Caprio folded his hands. Mr. Harrington, I asked you a simple question, and I answered it, Logan replied, voice rising with irritation. Look, I told you I didn't hit anyone. The old lady fell. That's it. It was a sentence that made several people inhale painfully. Evelyn Brooks sat in the second row, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her granddaughter Lily sitting beside her. The little girl's legs swung back and forth nervously, her eyes wide as she watched Logan speak about the incident with such dismissiveness. Judge Caprio took a slow breath. Mr. Harrington, he said softly, your words carry weight. Today, we will review the body cam footage fully, and we will hear from the victim. Logan rolled his eyes. Great. Let's get this over with. The bailiff dimmed the lights. A monitor flickered to life. Silence fell so heavy that even breathing felt loud. Dashcam footage began to play streetlights blurring past as Logan's Charger sped through Providence streets. The needle on the speedometer hovered dangerously high. The engine roared. Then the critical moment, the crosswalk. Evelyn stepping forward with Lily. The red light, the blaring horn, the screech of tires. Evelyn stumbling backward, her cane flying from her hand, Lily screaming. Gasps from the crowd watching the live playback echoed the same shock that had unfolded that night. The video paused at the exact frame where Logan's car halted inches from Evelyn. Frozen. Unavoidable. Undeniable. The courtroom was motionless. Logan's face drained of color only for a moment, but he quickly tried to recover, straightening up as if unfazed. That doesn't show anything new, he muttered. She shouldn't have walked so slow. Evelyn flinched. Judge Caprio turned toward Logan with a gaze that was no longer simply stern, it was deeply disappointed. Mr. Harrington, watch your words. But Logan didn't stop. He leaned forward, tone sharper, more defensive. What? It's the truth. She hesitated. That's what made it close. And the light. It was red, the judge interjected firmly, barely. You were going 52 miles per hour in a 25 zone, Caprio continued. Had you not slammed on the brakes, we might be discussing a fatality, Logan scoffed. I handled it. The room gasped again. Even Logan's own attorney shifted in discomfort. Judge Caprio angled his head, studying him. Mr. Harrington, do you understand the gravity of what happened? That you nearly killed a 76-year-old woman and an 8-year-old child? They're fine. Logan snapped. Nothing happened. You all keep acting like I committed a crime. You did commit a crime, Caprio said. His voice wasn't raised, but something about its steadiness held the power of a storm. The judge then turned to the bailiff. Please bring Ms. Brooks forward. Evelyn Brooks rose slowly, supported by her granddaughter. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as she made her way to the witness stand. Even the sound of her cane tapping the floor felt heavy with meaning. She sat. Lily climbed onto the chair beside her, small hands gripping the edges tightly. Mrs. Brooks, Caprio said gently, thank you for being here. Please, tell this court what happened that night from your perspective. I was taking Lily home after her school recital, she began. She was excited. We stopped at the crosswalk like we always do. The light turned red. I checked both sides. It was safe. She paused, eyes glistening. Then suddenly, I heard the engine, loud, so loud, and I saw the headlights coming toward us so fast, too fast, I thought that was my last moment. Lily clung to her grandmother, her voice small. I thought she was going to die. The courtroom tightened with emotion. People's eyes softened. Even Officer Cruz looked down, jaw clenched. Logan shifted uncomfortably, but still tried to maintain a facade of defiance. Evelyn continued. I fell because I tried to pull Lily out of the way. I was terrified. My heart still races when I cross streets now. And she turned her gaze toward Logan. He didn't even ask if we were all right. Lily sniffled. The innocence in that simple observation pierced the room deeper than any legal argument could. Logan's jaw clenched, his eyes wavered. For the first time, the mask cracked. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Mr. Harrington, do you have anything to say after hearing this? Logan opened his mouth, then closed it. He cleared his throat, searching for composure. Well, nothing happened in the end, he muttered weakly. The judge exhaled slowly, as though the words physically weighed on him. Mr. Harrington, what happened was a near tragedy. What didn't happen was a miracle. And I assure you, had the outcome been even slightly different, we wouldn't be discussing fines, we would be discussing prison. Logan's face tightened. He crossed his arms, angry now, cornered by reality. Judge Caprio tapped his pen once, decisively. This court will not rely solely on testimony, he declared. We will review the body cam footage next. A second video began. Officer Cruz approaching the scene, Evelyn trembling, Lily crying, Logan's dismissive comments echoing in crystal clear audio. Relax. Nothing happened. She fell on her own. My uncle's not going to waste his time on this. This time, Logan felt the weight of the words. Hearing them played back made him wince. They sounded colder, harsher, more monstrous than he remembered, and the entire courtroom heard them too. When the screen went dark, silence settled once more. Judge Caprio spoke quietly. Mr. Harrington, you have shown this court not only recklessness, but an alarming lack of empathy. Logan shot back, voice rising in desperation. Oh, come on. Why is everyone making me out to be some kind of villain? I said I was sorry. You have not apologized, Caprio said sharply. Not once. Not to the victim. Not to the child. Not to this court. Because the judge was right, he hadn't. Not even close. Judge Caprio then made a decision that shifted the entire room's energy. We will continue this case after a short recess, he announced, during which I will review additional footage and documentation. Mr. Harrington, you are to remain in the building. The gavel struck. People rose from their seats, murmuring. Some shook their heads. Others stared at Logan with disbelief, and Logan for the first time looked unsure. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. His eyes darted to the back of the courtroom, where Captain Harrington had quietly entered, watching everything, and the expression on the captain's face was not protective. It was ashamed. It was worried. It was disappointed. A mirror to Judge Caprio's earlier gaze. And for the first time in years, Logan felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear not of the law, not of punishment, but of being truly, deeply wrong. The recess stretched longer than anyone expected. People milled around the hallway, whispering in small clusters. Reporters typed furiously on laptops, eager to capture every detail. Court officers exchanged uneasy glances. Something about this case felt volatile, unpredictable. Attention lingered, like the air before a heavy storm, inside a dim corner of the courthouse. Captain William Harrington stood alone. His uniform, normally a symbol of pride, felt heavier than usual. He leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples. His thoughts churned. He had watched the footage. He had heard Logan's dismissive words. He had seen the fear on Evelyn Brooks's face. He had watched Lily trembling beside her grandmother. But worst of all, he had seen himself reflected in the young man he helped mold. For the first time in years, a painful truth surfaced in him. His protection had become poison. He had shielded Logan from consequences so many times that the boy no longer recognized danger, responsibility, or humanity. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Captain Harrington. He turned. Officer Daniel Cruz stood nearby, hands clasped behind his back, posture respectful but firm. The rookie officer looked nervous, yet determined. Cruz, the captain said quietly, you did everything by the book. I don't want you thinking otherwise. Cruz swallowed. With all due respect, sir, I wasn't sure if the report would actually go anywhere. The captain exhaled, long and slow, like a man releasing years of unspoken guilt. I understand why you'd think that, he admitted, and that alone tells me we've made mistakes. Big ones. Cruz nodded, unsure what else to say. Before either could speak again, the bailiff stepped out of the courtroom. Captain Harrington, Judge Caprio would like to speak with you privately. The captain stiffened. Of course. He followed the bailiff inside. The courtroom was empty now, except for Judge Caprio, sitting behind the bench. Papers were neatly arranged before him. The dashcam footage paused mid-frame on the monitor beside him. Logan's car loomed inches from Evelyn's frail body, an image that refused to fade. The captain approached. "Your Honor." Caprio looked up, his eyes calm but heavy with meaning. "Captain Harrington, thank you for coming." The captain stood tall, but his heart pounded. "I imagine this is about Logan." "It is," Caprio said, "but it's also about something larger." The captain waited. Caprio leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "I've known you a long time, Captain. I've seen you serve this community with dedication. I've seen your officers treat people with respect. But what we witnessed today," he gestured toward the screen, "this was not simply the behavior of a reckless young man. This was the behavior of someone who believes, deeply believes, that the law bends for him." The captain closed his eyes. "I take full responsibility for that." Caprio's voice softened, but remained firm. "Did you intervene in previous incidents involving your nephew?" A beat of silence. Then the captain answered with the honesty of a man who knew lying would only worsen the wound. "Yes," he said. "More times than I care to admit." Caprio nodded slowly. It wasn't a surprise, but hearing it aloud felt like an important shift, a turning point. "Why?" the judge asked, not accusing, but genuinely searching for understanding. The captain sighed, sitting heavily on one of the benches. "Because he's family," he began. "Because his father wasn't around. Because his mother asked me to look after him. Because I thought I was helping." He rubbed his face with both hands. "But instead of protecting him, I taught him that consequences were optional. And now he's become exactly what I never wanted him to be." Caprio remained silent, letting the weight of those words settle. The captain's voice cracked slightly, a rare fracture in an otherwise ironclad man. "He's not a bad kid, Your Honor. But he's lost. He's so used to being rescued that he doesn't understand danger, doesn't understand accountability. And if this continues, I'm afraid someone will get hurt, or worse." Caprio studied him for a long moment. Then he said something unexpected. "Captain, the most dangerous gift we can give someone is the belief that they are untouchable." The captain lowered his head. "I know, but it's not too late." Caprio continued gently. "Not for him, and not for you." The room held a fragile stillness, an opening for redemption. Just then, voices outside grew louder. The bailiff cracked the door open, revealing Logan pacing the hallway, agitated, angry, restless. He was arguing with someone, likely his attorney, waving his hands dramatically. "Ridiculous. Everyone's overreacting. This is a traffic thing, not a crime." His voice carried, sharp, unfiltered. Caprio turned back to the captain. "His belief that he is above the law must end," the judge said, "not for punishment's sake, but for his future, and for the safety of everyone around him." The captain straightened, resolve forming behind his tired eyes. "What do you need from me?" "Honesty," Caprio said simply. "Integrity, and for you to stop protecting him from the consequences he earned." The captain nodded. "I understand." Caprio stood. "Then the next part will require courage from both of you." The bailiff opened the doors wider, calling everyone back inside. The recess was over. People filtered back in. Reporters rushed to their seats. Evelyn and Lily returned to the front row. Officer Cruz stood near the aisle, posture rigid. Logan re-entered, annoyance radiating off him in waves. He shot a look toward his uncle. "Where were you?" "I've been waiting," Logan snapped. The captain didn't respond. But something in his eyes made Logan pause. For the first time in his life, his uncle didn't look like a shield. He looked like a mirror, and Logan didn't like what he saw. The courtroom settled. Judge Caprio returned, took his seat, and struck the gavel once. "This court will resume." Logan leaned on the podium, trying to regain control. "So what now?" he asked, with feigned bravado. Caprio lifted a folder. "Now," he said, "we examine the full extent of your actions and the truth behind what has brought us here today." Logan frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," Caprio continued, "that your behavior today has raised serious concerns about your understanding of responsibility, and your comments both yesterday and this morning suggest you believe your family's position protects you from accountability." Logan scoffed loudly. "Because it does. It always has." Gasps burst from the gallery. Even Logan looked shocked at his own admission, like the truth had slipped out before he could reel it back in. Caprio leaned forward, gaze sharp. Mr. Harrington, that belief ends today. Logan's face twisted. You can't just— I can, Caprio interrupted. And I will. He turned to the bailiff. Please bring in the additional documentation. The bailiff approached with a stack of files. Thick, heavy, damning. Your previous incidents, Mr. Harrington, Caprio said. The ones dismissed, sealed, or minimized. Logan paled. His uncle closed his eyes. Bracing himself, Caprio continued, voice calm but unyielding. I have reviewed your history, and it is clear that this pattern did not begin with the incident involving Mrs. Brooks. It began years ago when every mistake you made disappeared without consequence. Logan swallowed hard. That's not my fault. No, Caprio said. It isn't, but it is your responsibility. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Logan's composure cracked. Why are you doing this to me? Because this court, Caprio said, does not punish you for who you are. It holds you accountable for what you've done. And what you haven't learned, he added softly, because others prevented you from learning it. The captain slowly rose from his seat, and Logan looked at him, waiting for the familiar rescue. But this time, his uncle did not stand beside him. He stood behind him, and for the first time, Logan realized he was standing alone. The courtroom was no longer just a room. It had become a stage of truth, a place where the weight of past choices converged with the fragility of a future still unwritten. As Logan Harrington faced Judge Frank Caprio again, something in the atmosphere shifted. The earlier arrogance in his shoulders began to sag into something unfamiliar, something almost human. Judge Caprio turned toward the bailiff. Please bring Mrs. Brooks and her granddaughter back to the stand. Evelyn Brooks rose slowly, her cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. Lily walked beside her, tiny hand wrapped around her grandmother's trembling fingers. The room went quiet, respectful, protective, heavy with empathy. People watched them as though witnessing a chapter of history unfold. Logan watched them too. For the first time, he really saw them, not as an inconvenience, not as part of an accusation, but as two people who could have died because of him. Evelyn sat, Lily climbed into the chair beside her. Judge Caprio offered a gentle nod. Mrs. Brooks, thank you for speaking with us again. If you are able, could you share with the court how this incident has affected you since that night? Evelyn exhaled shakily, her fingers twisting around her cane. Well, she began, voice soft yet steady. Every night, I hear that engine, I see those headlights. It's like my mind refuses to let it go. I've lived 76 years, Your Honor. I've survived cancer. I've raised my children alone. But I've never felt closer to death than in that moment. Lily looked up at her grandmother, her small voice trembling. She still wakes up sometimes, shaking. I get scared too. The courtroom murmured in sympathy. Even hardened officers shifted in their seats. Evelyn continued. I don't want revenge, Your Honor. I don't want this young man destroyed. But I do want him to understand, truly understand what he did. She turned her gaze toward Logan firm. Sad, but not cruel. You looked at me like I was a problem, she said quietly. Not a person? I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't erase danger. It doesn't undo what happened. Logan's throat tightened. His jaw worked silently, as if trying to form words that refused to come. Judge Caprio nodded with deep respect. Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Your courage in coming here is not overlooked. You may remain seated for now. He then shifted his attention to Logan. Mr. Harrington, please step forward. Logan hesitated, then walked toward the center, where all eyes bore into him. Caprio's voice was calm but heavy. You have now heard, in her own words, the fear and suffering you caused. I am giving you an opportunity, perhaps your last chance, to speak honestly, not defensively, not arrogantly, but truthfully. What do you have to say? Logan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He swallowed hard. His eyes darted toward his uncle in the back row, searching for the usual silent cue, the subtle nod or reassuring gaze that once meant, I'll handle this. But Captain Harrington didn't look at him with reassurance. He looked at him with sorrow. And something else. Resolve. That absence of protection broke something inside Logan. For the first time in his life, He had to stand on his own. Finally, voice barely audible, he muttered, I don't know what to say. Caprio leaned slightly forward. Then, begin with the truth. Logan's shoulders slumped. The truth is, I didn't think. I didn't care. I thought I was untouchable. A ripple moved through the gallery. He continued, voice trembling. When I saw her fall, I didn't worry about her. I worried about myself. I thought, what is this going to cost me? What drama will this cause? I didn't even look at her. I didn't ask if she was okay. His eyes glossed, not with tears, but with shame. And seeing the video again, hearing what I said, he shook his head. I hate the way I sounded. I sounded like someone I wouldn't even want to be around. It was the first honest thing he'd said since entering the courtroom. Judge Caprio didn't smile, didn't nod approvingly. He simply observed, measuring whether Logan's words were real or another performance. And what about your threat yesterday? Caprio asked quietly. The one where you implied the police department could make this disappear? Logan looked down. I said it because I thought it was true. Because it has been true. Those words detonated through the courtroom like a dull explosion. All eyes shot to Captain Harrington. The captain stood slowly. The judge gestured that he had permission to speak. I've protected him, the captain admitted. His voice was low but carried. I've pulled strings, looked the other way, covered mistakes, not because it was right, but because I told myself I was keeping family together. He took a step closer toward the front. But today, I am done protecting him from the consequences he deserves. Logan's head snapped up, hurt, flashing behind his eyes. Uncle Will, he whispered. The captain didn't flinch. Logan, listen to me. I love you. But that love can't be a shield anymore. That shield has turned you into someone who can't see right from wrong. Logan's face crumpled with a strange, vulnerable expression. Anger, confusion, betrayal. Fear. Mostly fear. Judge Caprio let the moment sit, heavy and necessary. Then he addressed the captain directly. Captain Harrington, may I ask you something? Of course. Your Honor, if the roles were reversed, if a young man nearly killed your mother, your daughter, or your granddaughter, would you want the court to dismiss it as nothing happened? The captain's jaw tightened. His eyes grew red around the edges. No, he whispered. I would want justice. And what is justice? Caprio pressed gently. Facing the consequences of your actions. The captain answered. The words hung in the air like sacred truth. Logan stood frozen, processing every syllable. Judge Caprio then turned back to Logan. Mr. Harrington, your uncle has spent years shielding you. This is your first time standing in the full light of accountability, and it is not a comfortable place to stand. Logan nodded faintly, voice strained. I understand. Do you? Caprio asked, a long pause. Yes, Logan whispered. At least, I think I'm starting to. Judge Caprio looked at him with something that wasn't anger but wasn't softness either. It was expectation. A quiet demand for growth. Good, he said, because we are not finished. He gestured to the bailiff. Please play the street surveillance footage. Another monitor flickered to life. This time, the camera angle captured something new, the crowd reaction. People screaming, cars stopping abruptly, Evelyn falling, Lily running to her grandmother, Officer Cruz sprinting into the frame. Then, the camera followed Logan's face as he exited the car, annoyed, unfazed, irritated. The footage froze there. That image, the face of a young man who almost killed two people and looked inconvenienced by it, filled the courtroom. Everyone stared. Logan's breathing quickened. The reality of who he had been was undeniable. Caprio let the silence stretch, letting Logan confront the worst version of himself. Then, softly, Caprio said, "This is your wake-up call." Logan blinked hard. His shoulders quivered. He looked like someone finally seeing his own reflection after years of distortion. Evelyn spoke from the stand, voice gentle. "Logan, I don't hate you. I don't want you destroyed. I want you to grow. I want you to become the man you were supposed to be." Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. "I don't want you to hurt anyone else." Those words, spoken by two people he almost killed, landed with more force than any legal accusation. Logan's mouth trembled. "I'm sorry," he whispered. To both of you. For everything. Real tears threatened now, quickly blinked back, but real. Judge Caprio tapped his fingertips lightly on the bench. This court will determine a sentence, he said. But before that, there is one more matter to address. He reached for a document. Mr. Harrington, we will be holding a supplemental hearing, one in which your entire conduct and the involvement of any outside influence will be examined in the presence of the Internal Affairs Division and local media. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Logan's eyes widened. His uncle inhaled sharply. Evelyn held her breath. Caprio's voice stayed steady. Not to shame you, but to ensure transparency. This case has touched nerves in this community, and the people deserve clarity. He set the papers down. We adjourn until that hearing. The gavel struck. The room erupted into whispers, questions. Logan stood at the center of it all, no longer invincible, no longer protected, just exposed. Alone with the truth he could no longer outrun. When the doors to Judge Caprio's courtroom reopened after lunch, the energy inside felt electric, dangerous, unpredictable. Word had spread through Providence like a spark catching dry leaves. Reporters from local news outlets swarmed the doorway. Officers from Internal Affairs arrived with notepads ready. Civilians packed the gallery, some standing in the back, driven by rumors that the nephew of the city's police captain had threatened a judge. The hum of whispered conversations swelled into a steady roar, muffled only when the bailiff shouted, "All rise." Judge Frank Caprio entered with the steady grace of a man who had weathered storms far greater than this, but even he could feel the tremors running through the room. He sat down slowly, surveying the faces. Some looked angry, others eager. Many were worried. The only face he searched for was Logan's, and when he found the young man, he saw something new. Not arrogance, not boredom, not entitlement, but fear. Real, unfiltered fear. Logan's fingers twitched nervously at his sides as he stepped to the podium. The swagger of previous days had evaporated. His eyes, once defiant, were unfocused, darting between reporters and Internal Affairs agents. Every lens pointed at him made him shrink a little more. Judge Caprio lifted a sheet of paper. Mr. Harrington, before we continue, let me make one thing very clear. What is said today will carry consequences beyond this courtroom. Logan swallowed. This is a formal hearing. Caprio continued. Not for sentencing, but for determining whether your actions, including your threat toward this court, warrant additional charges. A murmur of anticipation rippled through the gallery. The judge looked at him with steady intensity. You will speak only when spoken to. Understood. Yes, Your Honor, Logan whispered. For the first time, he used the word sincerely. The judge nodded, then turned to Internal Affairs. Please proceed with your inquiries. An IA investigator stepped forward. He was tall, sharp-eyed, and carried the silent authority of someone accustomed to unraveling lies. Mr. Harrington, he began, we have reviewed your prior interactions with law enforcement. There appear to be irregularities. Logan stiffened. His uncle, Captain Harrington, clenched his jaw. The investigator continued. Our records indicate that on at least 3 occasions, officers wrote citations or recommended charges that were later withdrawn without explanation. Logan looked down. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. And we also have audio evidence, the investigator said, suggesting that you believed your uncle's position could protect you from this incident. The courtroom bristled. Everyone wanted to hear what Logan would say, but the investigator wasn't finished. We will be asking whether your uncle interfered in these cases. A sharp gasp shot through the gallery. Logan's uncle stood abruptly. I will answer that, he said before anyone could stop him. The investigator glanced at him. You may speak, Captain. Captain Harrington stepped forward, shoulders heavy with the weight of years of silent guilt. Yes, he admitted. I interfered. The room erupted. Shocked whispers, clicking cameras, gasps of disbelief. Even Logan stared at him, stunned. He had expected defiance, excuses, or a cover-up, not this. I pulled strings, the captain continued, voice cracking. I asked favors. I pressured officers. I told myself I was protecting him. But I wasn't. I was enabling him. Logan blinked hard, overwhelmed, jaw clenched as though trying not to cry. And as a result, the captain said, He became someone who believed the rules didn't apply to him, that the law was just an inconvenience. He turned toward Logan, and the pain in his voice shook the room. I did that to him, and I am ashamed. Silence fell. Even Judge Caprio paused, giving space to the truth that had finally, painfully surfaced. When the judge spoke, his voice was soft but firm. Captain Harrington, thank you for your honesty. The captain nodded, though shame weighed heavily on him. The investigator then turned back to Logan. Mr. Harrington, do you feel your uncle's influence has shielded you from consequences in the past? Logan hesitated, his throat bobbed. Yes, he said quietly. I thought, that's just how things worked. And do you still believe that? The young man's chest rose and fell with a shaky breath. No, not anymore. The investigator jotted down notes, then stepped aside. We have no further questions. Judge Caprio leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. Mr. Harrington, the floor is yours to explain your conduct during the earlier hearing. Specifically, your threat toward this court. Logan's breathing accelerated. This was the moment that would define everything. He gripped the podium to steady himself. The lights felt hot, the silence deafening. I wasn't thinking, he began, voice trembling. For my whole life, every time I messed up, someone fixed it. No matter what I did, even things that should have landed me in real trouble. His voice cracked. I thought I didn't have to take anything seriously. I was angry and scared. And he stopped, swallowing hard. And entitled. A small gasp echoed from somewhere in the back row. I said what I said because I believed it, Logan continued. I believed my uncle would protect me. I believed nothing could touch me. He looked up, tears forming but not falling. Not yet, but I was wrong, he said. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for threatening this court. I'm sorry for disrespecting you, Your Honor. I'm sorry for what I did to Mrs. Brooks and Lily. I'm sorry for everything. A hush descended. The sincerity in Logan's voice wasn't flawless, but it was real in a way that stunned many. Judge Caprio didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied Logan, truly studied him, as though searching for the roots of truth behind the words. Then he nodded once. Slowly, thank you for your honesty, Mr. Harrington. Logan's shoulders sagged with relief, but the judge wasn't finished. However, Caprio continued, your words, though remorseful, do not erase what happened in this courtroom earlier. He leaned forward slightly, voice carrying the weight of decades of justice. You threatened the integrity of a judicial proceeding. You threatened the independence of the court. You attempted to intimidate a process that must remain untouchable if justice is to function. Every reporter leaned in. Every camera focused tighter. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to sink. Logan swallowed. And for that reason, Caprio said, I am considering contempt of court charges. A ripple of shock tore through the gallery. Logan's hands shook. His knees nearly buckled. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. This court stands not just as a place where laws are applied, he continued, but as a symbol one that protects every citizen equally. When you threaten this institution, you don't threaten me. You threaten the very structure that guards this community. Logan looked devastated. But then, Judge Caprio's tone softened. Yet, I also believe in second chances. The room exhaled, tension melting into cautious hope. I have watched many young men and women come into this courtroom lost, entitled, misguided, he said gently. And I have watched them change. He fixed his gaze on Logan. But change does not begin with apologies. It begins with accountability. The captain lowered his head. Evelyn squeezed Lily's hand. Officer Cruz stood with unwavering focus. Logan, trembling, whispered, I accept whatever you decide, Your Honor. Caprio's eyes softened. Good, he paused, letting the moment expand, heavy with possibility. Then he struck the gavel. This supplemental hearing is concluded. Sentencing will occur during the final session tomorrow morning. Gasps. Shock. Reporters rushing out to file their stories. Logan stood frozen, caught between dread and relief. Because tomorrow would define the rest of his life. And there would be no hiding behind anyone, not even the captain. By the next morning, The courthouse steps looked like the entrance to a national event. News vans lined the sidewalk. Camera crews with tripods stood shoulder to shoulder. Local stations ran headlines like, "Nephew of police captain faces judge after threatening court." 1. Will privilege protect him? Judge Caprio's ruling expected to set precedent. People gathered as early as sunrise. Some out of curiosity, some out of anger, others out of hope that justice could still be seen, felt, and trusted. Inside the courthouse, the air vibrated with tension. Every bench was full. Men and women leaned forward, hands clasped. Officers stood straight, watching closely. Evelyn Brooks and Lily sat again in the front row, Evelyn dignified, Lily holding a small stuffed rabbit for comfort. Logan Harrington entered last, but he wasn't the same boy who had walked in earlier that week. His clothes were the same, but his posture wasn't. Gone was the swagger, the arrogant tilt of his chin, the restless, dismissive smirk. Instead, his shoulders were stiff yet humbled, his steps careful, and his eyes lowered, with the weight of something new, realization, and fear. His uncle, Captain Harrington, walked behind him, not to shield him, but to witness what came next. He looked older than he had the day before, the toll of truth showing in the creases around his eyes. At 9:04 a.m., the bailiff called out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Frank Caprio." The room rose, and then, in a slow breath, sat again. Judge Caprio surveyed the courtroom. He felt the weight of expectation pressing toward him from the public, from the media, from the police force, from the victim, and from one young man who desperately needed a turning point. But the judge focused only on one thing. What is right? Not what is easy, not what is expected, but what is right. He began. "This court is now in session. We are here to deliver sentencing in the matter of Mr. Logan Harrington." Logan lifted his head very slightly, not quite meeting the judge's eyes. Caprio continued, voice measured and gentle but firm. "Before I impose sentence, I wish to give Mr. Harrington the opportunity to speak." The courtroom leaned forward as if pulled by invisible strings. The entire room quieted. Logan stepped toward the podium, hands trembling so visibly that even the cameras caught it. When he spoke, his voice cracked at the edges. "Your Honor, I know I've said I'm sorry, but I didn't understand what that meant until I saw what I looked like on those videos. Hearing my own voice, seeing how I acted." He swallowed hard. "I was disgusting. I was selfish. I was cruel. And I didn't even see it." Somewhere, behind him, someone murmured, "Well, at least he sees it now." Logan continued, eyes glassy but focused. "I didn't care about anyone but myself. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care who I scared. I thought I was untouchable. I thought that being a Harrington made me different. Better, better, better." He shook his head slowly. "But I wasn't better. I was worse." The gallery murmured again, but softer this time. Compassion mixed with accountability. Logan exhaled shakily. "And when I threatened the court?" His voice fell. "I wasn't thinking about justice or honesty. I was thinking about escape, like I always have." He looked at Evelyn and Lily, who watched silently. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I promise. I will accept whatever you give me, Your Honor. I won't run. I won't hide." Then he added something unexpected. "And if there is a way for me to make things right, not just with words, I'll do it. I need to do it." The courtroom was still. Judge Caprio let the silence breathe for a moment. He studied Logan's face, searching for sincerity. What he saw wasn't perfect, but it was real. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington," he said quietly. "You may step back." Logan returned to his spot beside his attorney, his breathing uneven but relieved. He had finally said the words he had avoided his entire life. Caprio then shifted his gaze to Captain Harrington. "Captain, is there anything you wish to add?" The captain rose slowly, his blue uniform seeming heavier than steel. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, voice steady. He stepped to the center of the aisle. "I have spent 30 years enforcing the law, but in trying to protect my nephew, I failed the very principles I swore to uphold." He took another breath. "I enabled him. I allowed him to believe he was above consequences, and I take responsibility for that. Then, with a calm dignity that commanded the room, he said, "Whatever sentence the court gives him, I will not interfere. I will support it. I will support the law." Even the journalists stopped typing for a moment, stunned into silence. Judge Caprio nodded with deep respect. "Thank you, Captain. Your honesty honors your badge." The captain bowed his head slightly and returned to his seat. Finally, Caprio looked at Evelyn and Lily. "Mrs. Brooks," he said gently, "would you like to share anything before sentencing?" Evelyn stood slowly, leaning on her cane. She faced Logan. "I don't hate you," she began softly. "I forgive you, but forgiveness does not erase responsibility. If anything, it makes it more important." She placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You frightened both of us, and you need to understand what you nearly took away." Her eyes glistened. "But I believe you can change. And I hope that what happens today helps you become someone who never endangers another life again." Then Lily, shy but brave, whispered, "I want him to be better, not bad forever." Logan choked on a breath, wiping his eyes quickly. Judge Caprio took a final moment of silence to gather the threads of the entire case, its facts, its emotions, its failures, its potential for redemption. Then he spoke. "Mr. Harrington," he began, "your actions were reckless, dangerous, and nearly cost 2 lives. Your behavior toward this court was unacceptable, and your history made easier by the interference of others has left you with an incomplete sense of accountability." Logan gulped. "But—" The room froze. "I also believe you have been given a rare opportunity, not simply to avoid punishment, but to confront yourself, to grow, to choose who you want to be from this moment onward." Logan's chest tightened. "So, here is the court's decision," Caprio said. Reporters leaned so far forward their cameras nearly slipped off their laps. "For reckless endangerment, failure to stop at a red light, and conduct unbecoming, the court orders the following." He lifted the paper, yet his real authority came from his voice, not the ink. "You will have your driver's license suspended for 18 months. Logan nodded, accepting. "You will pay all related fines in full, no waivers, no reductions." Another nod. "You will perform 300 hours of community service." A soft gasp went through the room. But Caprio continued, "Not generic community service. You will work at the Providence Rehabilitation Center for senior trauma survivors, many of whom live every day with injuries caused by reckless drivers." Logan's breath hitched. "You will help with physical therapy exercises, meal preparation, and daily care. You will speak to them, listen to them, learn from them." Logan wiped his face. "And once a week," Caprio added, "you will sit with elderly residents who choose to share their stories. Stories of near-death moments, car accidents, or losses caused by careless driving." A deeper gasp. "You will face the consequences not by sitting in a cell, but by looking directly into the eyes of the people your actions endanger." Logan nodded more firmly now. Caprio's voice softened, but grew more powerful. "And finally, once every month, your uncle will accompany you for 1 session. Together, you will confront the cost of misplaced protection, privilege, and silence." The captain bowed his head, accepting the burden. Then, Caprio gave his final line, the words that would be quoted on news broadcasts for weeks. "Today, I am not just sentencing a young man. I am sentencing an idea, the dangerous belief that knowing the right people makes you more important than doing the right thing." A wave of emotion broke through the courtroom. Some cried, some clapped, some sat still. Stunned by the justice and humanity woven together, Logan breathed deeply, his chest trembling. He walked to Evelyn and Lily. He knelt. "I won't waste this," he whispered, and Evelyn, trembling, placed her hand on his shoulder. "I hope you never do." Judge Caprio struck the gavel. "This case is concluded." But for Logan Harrington, it was just beginning. The next morning, Providence felt different subtly, but unmistakably changed. Word of Judge Caprio's ruling had spread across the city like a current of electricity. In cafes, people murmured about the fairness of the sentence. In police stations, whispers circulated about long overdue accountability. In households, parents retold the story to their children. As a lesson, no one is above the law. But for one person, the ruling was not a headline or moral lesson. It was a new reality. At 7:43 a.m., Logan Harrington stood outside the Providence Rehabilitation Center for senior trauma survivors, dressed in a simple gray volunteer t-shirt. The sky was cloudy, soft, and muted, fitting for the uncertainty he felt. He took a deep breath and entered through the glass doors. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. The halls echoed with slow footsteps, soft voices, occasional groans from therapy rooms. Logan felt out of place, as though he'd wandered into a world he had no right to be in. A nurse approached him with a clipboard. "You're the new volunteer?" she asked. "Yes," Logan replied, his voice quiet. "I'm here for community service." She gave him a curt nod, not unfriendly, but not warm either. His reputation had preceded him. "You'll be assisting with mobility therapy today," she said. "Elderly patients recovering from car-related injuries. Follow me." Mobility therapy. He swallowed hard. As they walked, Logan saw rooms filled with people older than Evelyn, some with walkers, some in wheelchairs, some connected to machines. Some glanced at him with curiosity. Others looked away, uninterested in the newcomer. At the end of the hall, the nurse stopped at a wide room where 4 seniors sat in a semicircle, each trying to lift small hand weights. As a therapist encouraged them, "Your job is to help them stay steady," she instructed. "Encourage them, talk to them." Logan nodded, though nothing felt simple. He approached the closest patient, a thin man with deep wrinkles and bright eyes that revealed intelligence still sharp. "Hi," Logan said softly. "I'm Logan." The man snorted. "I know who you are. You're the kid who almost flattened a grandmother." Logan winced. "Yes, sir. That was me." "Good," the man said. "At least you're honest." Then, he held out a shaky hand. "Name's Walter." Logan took it gently. "Nice to meet you." Walter lifted his small weight again, grimacing. "You know," Walter muttered, "I used to drive trucks, 25 years. One accident ended it all. Damn drunk driver hit me head on. Broke my hip in 5 places." "I'm sorry," Logan whispered. Walter shrugged. "Life happens. But life doesn't have to happen because of stupidity." Logan lowered his eyes. "I know, I was stupid," Walter grunted. "Then don't be stupid again." It wasn't said with anger, just matter-of-fact wisdom. Logan nodded quietly. He stayed with Walter for the rest of the hour, helping him lift weights, rubbing his shoulder when it cramped, listening as the older man told stories of the road. It was strangely grounding, humbling, real. During lunch break, Logan carried trays to tables and refilled water cups. At first, the seniors watched him with cautious curiosity, but as the hours passed, their expressions softened. Some even smiled at him. But the true moment of change arrived near the end of the day. A nurse walked over to him. "Logan, I'd like you to meet someone. She arrived just an hour ago." He followed her to a small, quiet room. Inside sat a woman in her late 80s, staring out the window at the gray sky. Her left leg was in a brace. "She was hit by a distracted driver," the nurse said quietly, still shaken. Logan's chest tightened. The woman turned her head slowly. Her eyes were soft, tired, and full of a quiet sorrow that pierced him deeper than anger ever could. "Hello," she whispered. "Hi," Logan said, voice barely audible. "I'm helping here today." She nodded, studying him carefully. "You remind me of my grandson," she said. "Is that good?" Logan asked nervously. She offered a small, sad smile. It was, until he crashed his car while texting. Logan felt the words slam into him. "He survived," she continued, "but the person in the other car didn't." Logan swallowed the lump in his throat. The woman reached out her hand. He hesitated, then gently held it. "I hope," she said softly, "that you make better choices than he did. I hope you learn before it's too late." Logan's voice cracked. "I'm trying." "That's all you can do," she whispered. And something inside him, some stubborn shield, some lifelong armor, finally crumbled. Tears gathered at the corners of his eyes, though he blinked them away quickly. He stayed with her until her eyelids grew heavy, and she drifted into sleep. When Logan stepped back into the hallway, his uncle was standing there, Captain Harrington wore civilian clothes today because Judge Caprio had made one thing clear. These monthly sessions were meant to strip away power and hierarchy, to make him just a man, not a badge. Logan froze. His uncle looked at him, not with disappointment, not with pride, but with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "How was it?" the captain asked. Logan exhaled shakily. "Hard." His uncle nodded. "It's supposed to be." They said nothing. Then the captain spoke again, voice soft. "I failed you, Logan." Logan looked down. "I failed myself." The captain reached out, placing a hand on his nephew's shoulder, gentle, not protective. "Maybe," he said slowly. "Maybe this is how we fix it together. Not by running from consequences, but by facing them." Logan nodded. For the first time in years, uncle and nephew stood eye to eye, not as protector and protected, but as two people trying to heal the damage between them. Weeks passed. Logan showed up every day to the rehabilitation center. Sometimes he worked with Walter, who continued to scold him with tough love. Sometimes he helped serve meals. Sometimes he cleaned wheelchairs or replaced water pitchers, or simply sat beside someone who needed company. But the hardest assignment came from a therapist who pointed him toward a quiet room one afternoon. "Today," she said, "you're going to help lead a support group." Logan froze. "A support group?" "Yes, for seniors who have survived car accidents." His throat tightened. "This is part of my sentence," the therapist said gently. "This is part of your growth." When he entered the room, 5 elderly men and women sat in a circle. Some had walker frames beside them. One had a breathing tube. One had burn scars along her arms. They looked up as he stepped in. Logan sat down, facing them. "Hi," he said quietly. "My name is Logan. I'm here because I almost hurt someone, and I didn't care until it was almost too late." The room stayed silent. Then one woman nodded slowly. "That's a start," she said, and they began. For an hour, they shared stories painful, raw, honest. Logan listened, asked questions, offered apologies without excuses. At one point, he broke down, crying not loudly, not theatrically, but with the quiet grief of someone finally understanding the toll of his actions. By the end, all 5 seniors shook his hand. "You're learning," one said. "Keep going," another whispered. Word of Logan's transformation slowly made its way back to Judge Caprio. And a month later, when Logan stood in the courtroom again for a progress review, Caprio saw something unmistakable. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. The hollow, performative remorse was gone. Standing before him was a young man humbled by reality, reshaped by responsibility, softened by empathy. "Mr. Harrington," Caprio said, "how have you been progressing?" Logan answered without hesitation. "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," he admitted. "But I think I'm finally becoming the person I should have been all along." Caprio nodded slowly. "That," he said, "is the purpose of justice, not to destroy, but to rebuild." He dismissed the court. As Logan walked out, Evelyn Brooks waited for him near the exit, Lily by her side. "Well?" she asked with a gentle smile. Logan smiled back, a real grateful smile. "I'm working on it," he said. Evelyn squeezed his arm. "That's all any of us can do." Lily handed him a small paper drawing a stick figure boy standing beside a smiling grandmother and a heart above them. "For you," she said shyly. Logan blinked back tears. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'll never forget this." And he meant it. That afternoon, as he walked down the courthouse steps, cameras snapped and reporters called out, "Logan, how do you feel about your sentence? Do you think Judge Caprio was fair? What have you learned?" But Logan didn't rush to the spotlight. He simply said, "He saved my life." And then he walked calmly into the future. He was ready, finally ready to build a future shaped not by privilege, but by responsibility, not by power, but by compassion, not by protection, but by truth. Because the sentence Judge Caprio gave him wasn't legendary because it was harsh. It was legendary because it made a boy become a man. The story of Logan Harrington reminds us that privilege can become a prison one, built not from bars, but from the absence of consequences. His transformation shows that accountability is not cruelty. It is a gift. When society shields someone from every mistake, It doesn't protect them, it cripples them. True growth comes only when we are brave enough to face the harm we cause, to listen to those we've hurt, and to choose change over comfort. Judge Caprio's legendary ruling teaches that justice works best not when it punishes blindly, but when it restores humanity both for the victim and the offender, and Captain Harrington's courage shows that love without boundaries becomes harm, but love with truth becomes healing. What about you? What lesson did you take from this story? Comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful courtroom stories.